What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. So this is a new video series that I'm hoping to do every couple of months. We're going to say every 3 months and see how it goes. If you guys enjoy this, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. But it is a bit different than what I normally do. So in today's video, we're going to talk about two main topics, and each topic will have 5 elements to that. And of course, I need some comments down below, some discussion. How do you guys feel about each topic? How do you feel about 2020 as a whole so far? Have movies disappointed you, upset you? Have you been really happy with what we've gotten? I would love to know all of those things. But first, we're going to talk about 5 things that we know about movies in 2020 so far. Now, this could be about specific movies, about actors involved in movies, box office, and while we're not going to hit on all of those things in this video, those are just examples of topics that we could talk about. But the first main topic that I want to hit on is the fact that the horror genre in 2020, something that I was personally very excited about and something that I think could turn around, and that really all starts with The Invisible Man, the first great horror movie that I saw this year, even though maybe I wasn't expecting it to be on that level, right? Well, every other movie that I've seen has either been disappointing, really bad, or atrocious. The horror genre has struggled in 2020. And yes, we have movies like Saint Maud, we have films like Antlers, a lot of things that could definitely turn the tide, and it really has already started with The Invisible Man. But if we're talking about some of my least favorite movies of the year so far, from The Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson to The Grudge to The Turning, they've either been underwhelming to a significant degree or just plain awful. And whether that is trying to pump out these studio remakes, if you're looking at a movie like The Grudge, The Turning, if you're looking at a film that's just trying to take advantage of young stars and the fact that they thought they had a good idea, but one that did not execute. And with these horror films, it all comes down to execution. Fantasy Island is a wonderful example of a great premise, a great concept of redoing this very famous show from the 70s in a way that sounded cool, and even kind of looked cool from the trailers, even though I was like, the trailer doesn't look all that good, but it could be fun. And it's Blumhouse. But even a movie like that fell flat. So horror movies have significantly underwhelmed. And by the way, if you guys are wondering, this is letterboxed. This is a list of not all of the movies I've seen in order, but all of the movies I've seen in the order of when they released. So that's where this list came from. Next up is a topic that I normally never really hit on this channel specifically, but I've watched quite a few video on demand movies this year. And normally when you think about a movie that goes straight to on demand, you think, well, it wasn't good enough to come out in theaters, or the studio didn't really know what to do about it, and they didn't want to give it a theatrical release. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes they just don't know if people are going to show up to the movies. But this year, I've seen some pretty good movies on demand, maybe even more so at this point from 2019 than last year. And one recently that I am going to review on Letterboxd is Escape from Pretoria, starring Daniel Radcliffe. And these movies aren't fantastic by any means, but when you think of on-demand movies, some of them could definitely be surprising. Now, The Night Clerk is not the best example, but then I go to one of my favorite movies of the year so far in VFW, a movie all about a group of war veterans who goes to war with this other bar, this group of hooligans down the street, and it really is this all-out R-rated brawl. And movies like that they're not confident enough, or they just don't know how to go about releasing them in a theater. They've come out and surprised me this year. Buffaloed is another good example. Not a fantastic movie, but Zoe Dutch gave a great performance. And then and I know Troop Zero is an Amazon Prime release, but you could still technically count it as one that comes out on a streaming platform. But speaking of streaming platforms, my next point is the fact that Netflix has been mediocre this year. And now that I expected to go into March thinking, oh, Netflix has been on a roll this year, we still have plenty of time for Netflix to turn the tide around. But I've watched 12, 13 Netflix films, and really only one has stood out to me, and that is 37 Seconds, which is in my top 5, top 10 movies of the year so far. But really everything else, and even a movie like P.S. I Love You, the sequel to All the Boys, I enjoyed it, I had fun with it, but I can't sit here and say that everyone loved it. It's divisive. You have a film like The Last Thing He Wanted, one of my least favorite movies of the year, and really one of the last things I wanted. Spencer Confidential, which I wasn't a huge fan of at the end of the day. Horse Girl, which was divisive. A Fall from Grace, which just didn't do it for me. All the Bright Places, P.S. I Love You, 37 Seconds. Those movies are at least solid in my opinion, but only one has stood out, and that's 37 Seconds. But the problem is, no one's really seen that movie. I'm one of the only people that I know, so I hope it gets more attention, and I hope Netflix begins to turn the tide around. I think they will. Next up, stop with the flops. We've had already 2 massive flops, and this isn't necessarily a critique of the quality of these 2 films, even though Dolittle, I didn't like Dolittle, but it did not do very well at the box office, and I'm talking we're going to lose the studio a ton of money. And the other one is The Call of the Wild. And not that The Call of the Wild completely bombed if you look at its opening weekend, this and that, but then you account for the budget, and yeah, it bombed. How could you spend over $100 million on a movie like that? I love Harrison Ford. I love the concept. I love the fact that it's based off of a book. But why that much money? You know the movie is not going to do well if you're spending that much money on the film. Look at a film like The Invisible Man, a $7 million budget, making $30 million opening weekend. And even Fantasy Island. I didn't like the film, but another $7 million budget. And it does have to do with the fact that they use CGI dogs, this and that. But why spend that much money on movies like The Call of the Wild? And to a degree, I understand Dolittle, but when you have a story that messy and you have a script that bad, I just don't get it. But to end this portion on a positive note, I still haven't seen that phenomenal movie thus far, but I've seen some pretty great films, and I've also seen some major surprises. Movies like Onward, movies like Birds of Prey, movies like Sonic, movies like Bad Boys, The Invisible Man even, my favorite movie of the year so far. They are massive surprises, whether it's I didn't like the trailers all that much, or with Onward. It's a Pixar movie, but it's one that hasn't caught my interest like some of these other films. Or Sonic. We all saw the first trailer for Sonic, and then we saw the newer trailer, and yeah, sure, the design looks great, but is it going to be fun? And I didn't think Sonic was a great movie, but I had fun with it. And these are films that in some way, big or small, they have surprised me. And 2020, even though it's given us some rough movies to this point, there have been some major surprises, so that's something to keep in mind. And I'm going to keep this portion quick, but before we go, I'm going to give you guys 5 things I'm looking forward to as of the first week of March. So if you're watching this video in June, you're like, awesome, we've already seen that. Well, I can't tell the future, or can I? Number 1, we still haven't seen a movie made by one of the big dogs, and some great directors have tackled films so far in 2020, Gavin O'Connor being one of those, but we're talking Christopher Nolan, Tenet, Denis Villeneuve, Dune, David Fincher, Mank, Wes Anderson, The French Dispatch, a lot of massive filmmakers making a resurgence, coming back to the forefront in 2020. So those could be the movies that take us by storm and become one of those phenomenal films. That's probably the biggest thing I'm looking forward to. Then we have the horror resurgence. We talked about how bad horror has been so far in 2020, but the tide started to turn with The Invisible Man, and now we have movies like A Quiet Place Part 2, Saint Maud, Antlers, a lot of great-looking, maybe even more artistic horror films over the next couple of months. But if they end up hitting the level that I believe a lot of them will hit, horror is about to take a big turn in 2020, and I'm ready for it. Next up, I'm looking forward to the first great blockbuster this year, and I'm really hoping it hits within the next couple of months, whether it is a Black Widow, whether it is a Mulan. Thought it was going to be No Time to Die. Obviously, that's not going to happen because that has moved, but I need to know in the comments down below what is going to be the first great big-budgeted blockbuster of this year. You could say it's A Quiet Place. I'm going even more so. I'm talking even bigger budgets. I'm talking superheroes, war epics, this or that. What's the first great one that you believe we're going to get this year? Mulan is coming. Maybe that's it. Number 4 is just the vamping up of marketing for some of these bigger movies coming at the end of the year, whether it's Eternals, whether it's Dune. There are a lot of great films that are coming around that time, and we've not seen anything about them. I'm really looking forward to Eternals because I love that story and the comics so much. And then obviously we talked to Denis Villeneuve. I just want a picture. I want an image. We've seen concept art. I need something. So those first looks, those first takes, those first trailers, that's what I'm looking forward to. Not in the movie space. I mean, he's in the movie space, but not a movie, you know. And number 5, since we're in March, I just want to talk about my most anticipated movie coming out this month, and that's obviously A Quiet Place Part 2. Now, The Way Back was very close to that, and that movie delivered. I want A Quiet Place 2 to deliver so bad. I love John Krasinski. I love his work. I love the concept behind bringing this film back and the lore that they established in the first film. I think it could lead into a very good sequel, if not one that surpasses the originals. So that is my final question. I know I've had a lot of questions, and hey, comment this and that below, but my final question is, what's your most anticipated movie of March? And I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I mean, this is something different. We don't always do things like this on the channel, but if you like this kind of thing, if you want more videos in this vein, please let me know and support this series by hitting that thumbs up button and commenting your thoughts. I want some discussion. I appreciate you all for watching. I hope you have a great Sunday. I'll see you next week with a lot more reviews and videos and words about movies.